Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Ready to boost your life? Today, we're going to dig into a podcast episode called 10 Habits That Will Boost Your Life. I gotta say, it's packed with some really cool advice.
It's fascinating how a few little tweaks to our daily routines can really make a huge difference. And that's what these habits are all about. Not like total life overhauls, but small changes that can lead to really big changes over time.
Okay, so let's jump into habit number 1. Starting your day with a morning routine. I've been messing around with mine lately, and wow, it really sets the tone for my entire day.
There's a real science to that, actually. Our bodies release cortisol, the stress hormone, in the morning. And a routine can help regulate those levels. So instead of that morning stress surge, you're starting with calmness and clarity.
So it's not just about being organized, it's about biohacking your stress. That's really cool. But what about people who aren't, morning people?
Even if you're not a morning person, a short and sweet routine can help a ton. It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing. Even just 10 minutes, maybe stretching, a little meditation, or even just savoring a cup of coffee in peace can totally set a positive tone.
Yeah, I've noticed even just making my bed, that small thing gives me this little sense of accomplishment. All right, let's have a productive day.
Exactly. It's like creating this momentum, these small wins build up to bigger wins.
Okay, habit number 2, prioritizing health and fitness. I know this one sounds familiar, but what fresh perspectives did the podcast have?
I think what we often forget is the huge impact exercise has on our mental and emotional well-being, not just physical. When you exercise, your brain releases endorphins, mood boosters. It's like a natural antidepressant.
So it's about feeling good too, not just looking good.
Totally. And studies show even moderate exercise can reduce anxiety and improve sleep. It's a serious stress management tool.
I feel that. When I'm stressed, a good workout always clears my head. It's like hitting the reset button on my emotions.
Absolutely. And it doesn't need to be intense. Even a brisk walk outside can be great for your mental state. Just find activities you enjoy and make them part of your routine.
I used to think exercise had to be this huge thing, but even small bits throughout the day help. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking during lunch, it all adds up.
I agree. It's those conscious choices to move your body throughout the day. And the benefits go way beyond stress. Think improved focus, better creativity, even sharper cognitive function.
Okay, so we've got setting a positive tone for the day, taking care of our physical and mental health. What's the next life-boosting habit?
Cultivating gratitude.
Gratitude. I love this one.
Yeah.
So simple but powerful.
Yeah.
How does the podcast recommend practicing gratitude effectively? It's easy to just say be grateful, but how do we make it a real habit?
They recommend making it a daily thing, even just for a few minutes. You can write in a gratitude journal, meditate on things you're thankful for, or just spend a few moments reflecting on the good in your life.
I tried the gratitude journal, and it's amazing how it shifts your perspective. You start to appreciate all the good stuff instead of focusing on what's missing.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to change and adapt, actually comes into play. Consistently focusing on gratitude actually rewires your brain to be more positive.
Wait, so gratitude can actually change our brains? That's wild.
Yeah, it's amazing. Research shows that practicing gratitude can increase happiness, improve sleep, even strengthen our immune systems.
Wow. So it's not just about feeling good in the moment, it's creating lasting positive changes in our brains and bodies. I'm definitely getting back to my gratitude practice. This is inspiring.
That's awesome. And speaking of inspiration, the next habit is all about setting clear goals.
Goals, yes. Big believer in the power of goals. But a lot of people, I think, struggle with it. They set goals that are too vague or too big, and then they get discouraged when they don't reach them. What insights does the podcast offer on setting effective goals?
They highlight breaking down large goals into smaller, more manageable steps. It's like climbing a mountain. You don't just magically appear at the top. You got to take it one step at a time.
Great analogy. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the big picture, but breaking it down into smaller milestones makes it feel so much more doable.
Exactly. And they suggest using a goal-setting framework or even an app to stay organized and track your progress. Having a visual representation of your goals and your progress, that can be super motivating.
Love that idea. It's like having a roadmap for your dreams. Okay, so we've talked about starting the day with intention, taking care of our well-being, cultivating gratitude, and setting clear goals. What's next on the list?
This one might surprise you. Reading more books.
Reading, really? Well, I love to read, but I'm curious why the podcast considers this a key habit for boosting your life.
Reading is such a powerful form of continuous learning. It exposes you to new ideas, new perspectives, and new information. It broadens your horizons and helps you grow as a person.
Couldn't agree more. Reading has always been my escape, my way to travel to other worlds and learn about different cultures. But it's more than entertainment. It's about expanding your mind and understanding of the world.
And the benefits go beyond just learning new things. Reading can also improve your focus, sharpen your memory, and even increase your emotional intelligence.
I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense. When you're into a good book, you're totally present in that moment, and you're also connecting with the characters and their experiences on an emotional level.
Exactly. It's like a workout for your mind and your emotions.
Okay, I'm sold. Reading, officially a life-boosting habit. But how about those of us who struggle to find the time? Life is busy. Any tips from the podcast on making reading a regular habit?
Make it a priority. Schedule time for it, even just 15 minutes a day. And try different things. Audiobooks, podcasts, even well-written articles can feed that intellectual growth.
Great advice. It's about making reading a conscious choice and finding ways to fit it in.
Shifting gears a bit, our next habit is about creating order in our lives, staying organized.
Staying organized. This one can be tough for a lot of people, myself included sometimes. But what's the link between organization and boosting your life?
Clutter is distracting and draining. It can make it hard to focus, increase stress levels, even mess with your sleep.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. When my desk is a disaster, my mind feels cluttered too, like my thoughts can't flow.
Exactly. A cluttered space leads to a cluttered mind. But an organized environment can promote calm, clarity, and a feeling of control.
So it's not just about aesthetics, it's about creating a space that supports your mental well-being and your productivity.
Right on. And it's not about being a minimalist either. It's about systems that work for you, a sense of order that feels good. Declutter your physical space, organize your digital files, use to-do lists. Those are all small but powerful habits.
Love that. It's about an environment that feels supportive and energizing, not draining and overwhelming.
Speaking of feeling energized, the next habit is about having a mindset that embraces challenges and sees setbacks as chances to grow. It's about developing a growth mindset.
Growth mindset. I've heard so much about this. I'm really fascinated by its potential. Can you break down what a growth mindset is and why it's so important?
Basically, a growth mindset means believing that your abilities and intelligence aren't fixed. They can be developed through effort and learning. This is different from a fixed mindset, where people believe their abilities are innate, they can't change.
So with a growth mindset, you embrace challenges and see failures as learning opportunities. Instead of, I'm not good at this, it's, I'm not good at this yet.
Right. And that subtle shift in perspective can make all the difference. It allows you to approach setbacks with curiosity and determination, not fear and self-doubt.
Even in my own life, I've noticed that when I have a growth mindset, I'm more willing to take risks, try new things, and keep going even when things are tough.
And that's where the magic happens. When you step outside your comfort zone and embrace challenges, you create opportunities to grow and learn.
But how do we actually develop a growth mindset? It sounds amazing, but what are some practical steps?
The podcast recommends paying attention to your self-talk. Notice when you're using fixed mindset language and reframe those thoughts using growth mindset language.
So instead of saying, I'm terrible at math, you could say, I'm working on improving my math skills.
Exactly, shifting from limitations to possibilities.
They also talked about surrounding yourself with people who have growth mindsets. Their attitudes can be contagious.
Absolutely. The people around us deeply influence our beliefs and behaviors. So choose people who inspire you to grow and learn.
Creating a support system for your growth mindset.
Exactly. And continuous learning plays a big part too.
That makes sense. When you're always expanding your knowledge and skills, it reinforces the belief that you're capable of growth and development.
And it doesn't have to be formal education. It could be reading, listening to podcasts, taking online courses, attending workshops, even just having conversations with people who have different viewpoints.
It was about being curious and open to new ideas and experiences.
Curiosity and openness, those are essential ingredients for a fulfilling life.
Absolutely. When we approach life with wonder and a thirst for knowledge, we open ourselves up to endless possibilities.
And that brings us to another important point. The power of surrounding ourselves with positive people. We touched on it earlier, but let's explore it further.
Definitely. The people we spend time with have a significant impact on our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
maybe not literally true, but there's truth to the idea that our social circles shape us.
Absolutely. The podcast talked about social contagion, the idea that emotions can be contagious.
So if we're around positive people, we're more likely to feel positive.
Exactly. And the other way around. If we're always around negativity, it can start to affect us too.
Makes sense. I've definitely seen that happen.
So be mindful of the people in your inner circle. Choose relationships that nourish you, support your growth, and inspire you to be your best.
It's like building a positive, supportive environment for yourself.
Precisely. And that might mean creating some distance from relationships that aren't serving you anymore.
That can be tough, but sometimes it's necessary for our own well-being.
For sure. It's about putting your mental and emotional health first.
Now, let's talk about a habit that's often overlooked: self-care.
Self-care is so essential, but it's often the first to go when we're stressed.
It's easy to get caught up in the craziness of life and forget to take care of ourselves.
Totally. But the podcast emphasized that self-care isn't selfish, it's self-respect.
When we prioritize our own well-being, we're actually better equipped to show up for others authentically and meaningfully.
It's like the oxygen mask on an airplane. Put on your own mask first, then you can help others.
Perfect analogy. Self-care is about refueling our own energy so we can give our best to the world.
And it's different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. For some, it's a long bath, a good book, time in nature. For others, it's a run, music, coffee with a friend.
It's all about finding what nourishes your mind, body, and soul.
And making those things a regular part of your routine.
Absolutely. Self-care shouldn't be a luxury. It should be non-negotiable.
And it doesn't have to be big or expensive.
Right,
Yeah.
You're right. It could be as simple as deep breaths, listening to your favorite song, or a short walk.
It's about those small, conscious choices to prioritize your well-being.
Exactly. Small choices make a big difference over time.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. We dove into the 10 habits from the 10 Habits That Will Boost Your Life podcast and explored some really important themes, like having a growth mindset, surrounding ourselves with positive people, and prioritizing self-care.
It's been a great discussion. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to incorporate some of these habits.
Me too. And remember, it's never too late to start making positive changes.
Absolutely. No matter where you are in your journey, there's always room for growth.
So what are some things our listeners can do to start implementing these habits?
I think the first step is to choose one or two habits that really speak to you. Don't try to do it all at once. Small, consistent changes are key.
And be patient with yourself, right? Change takes time and effort.
Definitely. And don't be afraid to experiment. Find what works for you and adapt these habits to fit your lifestyle.
And have fun with it. Self-improvement shouldn't feel like a chore.
It should be a journey of discovery and growth. You got it.
Well said. I think it's time to wrap things up for now.
Okay, let's bring this part of the deep dive to a close.
Back to the deep dive, folks. We just went through these 10 amazing habits from the 10 Habits That Will Boost Your Life podcast, and I'm feeling pretty inspired, I gotta say.
Yeah, me too. It's kind of wild how such seemingly small, simple things can make such a big difference in our lives. What really stood out to you as we went through those habits?
You know, I'm struck by how interconnected they all are. It's like they build on each other and kind of create this positive feedback loop.
Right, like having a solid morning routine sets you up for a more productive day, which frees up time for things like exercise or reading. And then those things boost your well-being, making it easier to practice gratitude and all that.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect at all 10 things at once. It's more about recognizing how they all work together.
Definitely. It's about balance and finding what works for you and making it, sustainable.
So maybe instead of trying to tackle all 10 at once, we start with one or two and build from there.
I like that approach. And we have to remember, everyone's different. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
True. It's all about experimenting and finding what clicks for you.
Absolutely. And being patient. Change takes time and effort. We're going to have setbacks along the way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know I've fallen off the wagon with some habits in the past, but it's about getting back on track and not letting those setbacks totally derail us.
I agree. Progress over perfection, right?
Right. Now, thinking about those 10 habits, I'm curious about your take on one in particular: developing a growth mindset. We touched on it earlier, but I think it deserves a little deeper dive.
Totally. It's such a powerful idea, and it can affect so many areas of our lives.
Could you refresh us on what a growth mindset actually is and why it's so important?
Sure thing. Basically, a growth mindset is believing that your skills and intelligence aren't fixed. They can grow and develop through effort and learning. It's the opposite of a fixed mindset, where you believe your abilities are, like, set in stone.
So with a growth mindset, you embrace challenges and see failures not as the end, but as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. Instead of thinking, I'm not good at this, you think, I'm not good at this yet.
I love that. That little shift can make a huge difference.
Totally. It helps you approach things with curiosity and determination instead of, like, fear and self-doubt.
Even in my own life, I've noticed that when I have a growth mindset, I'm more willing to take risks, try new stuff, even when it's hard.
And that's where the real growth happens. When we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, that's where we learn and develop the most.
Okay, so how do we actually get that growth mindset? It sounds great, but how do we make it happen?
The podcast had some cool tips. One thing is to notice your self-talk. Pay attention to when you're using fixed mindset language and try to reframe it in a more positive, growth-oriented way.
So instead of, I'm terrible at math, maybe it's, I'm working on getting better at math.
Exactly. It's a shift from limitations to possibilities.
They also talked about the power of being around people with growth mindsets. Their energy can be contagious.
Oh yeah, the people we hang out with have a big impact on our beliefs and behaviors. Surround yourself with folks who inspire you to grow and learn.
It's like building a support system for growth.
Right. And, another way to cultivate a growth mindset is through continuous learning, constantly expanding your knowledge and skills.
Makes sense. That reinforces the idea that you are capable of growth.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be like going back to school. It could be reading, podcasts, online courses, workshops, even just good conversations with people who have different perspectives.
So many possibilities. It's really just about being curious and open to new things.
And that curiosity and openness are so important for a fulfilling life.
I agree. When we approach life with that sense of wonder and excitement, we open ourselves up to so much more.
That reminds me of another important point from the podcast, the power of having positive people around us. We touched on this before, but it's worth exploring further.
Definitely. Who we spend our time with has a huge impact on our thoughts, feelings, even how we act.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
True. Maybe not exactly, but there's a lot of truth to that idea.
Right. The podcast brought up social contagion, the idea that emotions can be contagious.
Oh, yeah. So hanging out with positive people makes us more likely to feel positive ourselves.
Exactly. And the opposite is true too. If we're around negative people all the time, it can start to bring us down.
I can totally see that. I have experienced it myself.
So it's crucial to be mindful of who we let into our inner circle. Seek out relationships that feel good, support your growth, and inspire you to be your best self.
Create a positive, supportive ecosystem for yourself. I like that.
Yeah. And sometimes that might mean creating some distance from relationships that are bringing you down.
That can be a tough decision, but it's important to remember that sometimes it's necessary for our own well-being.
Absolutely. It's about putting your mental and emotional health first.
Let's switch gears a bit and talk about another habit that's so important but often gets pushed aside. Self-care.
Yes, self-care is crucial for our well-being, but it's often the first thing to go when we're stressed or busy.
It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to take care of ourselves.
Totally. But the podcast made a great point. Self-care is not selfish. It's self-respect.
It's about recognizing that we deserve to be taken care of, and when we do take care of ourselves, we're actually better equipped to show up for others in a more genuine and meaningful way.
Right. Like putting on your own oxygen mask on a plane before helping others.
Love that analogy. It really drives home the point that taking care of ourselves is essential.
Exactly. And self-care can look different for everyone, right? There's no one right way to do it.
For sure. Some people love a long bath, a good book, or being in nature. Others might prefer a run, listening to music, or having coffee with a friend.
The important thing is to find what nourishes your mind, body, and soul.
And make it a regular thing, not a once-in-a-blue-moon treat.
Absolutely. Self-care should be non-negotiable.
And it doesn't have to be a big production or cost a lot of money.
Totally agree. It can be simple things, like taking a few deep breaths, listening to a favorite song, or going for a quick walk.
It's about those small but intentional choices to put your well-being first.
Small choices can add up to big changes.
Wow, we've covered so much today. We revisited those 10 powerful habits from 10 Habits That Will Boost Your Life, and had some great discussion about things like developing a growth mindset, surrounding ourselves with positive people, and making self-care a priority.
It's been awesome. I really hope our listeners feel inspired to try some of these things out in their own lives.
Me too. And it's never too late to make positive changes.
Absolutely. No matter where you are on your journey, there's always room to grow and improve.
Okay, so what are some actionable steps our listeners can take to start incorporating these habits into their lives?
Well, like we said before, start with 1 or 2 habits that resonate with you the most. Don't try to do everything at once. Just focus on small, consistent changes in those areas.
And don't forget to be patient with yourself. Change takes time and effort.
Definitely. And feel free to experiment. Find what works for you and adapt those habits to fit your unique lifestyle.
Make it your own. And most importantly, have fun with it. Self-improvement shouldn't feel like a chore.
It should be an enjoyable journey of discovery and growth.
Well said. I think it's time to move on to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, let's wrap things up.
All right, as we wrap up our deep dive into these 10 life-boosting habits, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Hit us with it.
So, out of all these 10 habits we talked about, which one do you think has the biggest potential to really transform your life? It's like picking a favorite, I know. But if you had to choose just one to focus on, which would it be?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of what self-improvement is all about, right? It's personal. There's no one right answer. It all depends on where you're at and what you're looking for in life.
Exactly. Maybe for someone who's feeling super stressed, mindfulness and meditation could be huge. Or for someone feeling kind of stuck, developing that growth mindset could open up all these new doors.
For sure. It's all about figuring out where you want to grow the most and putting your energy there.
And, it's not like a one-time decision. What's most important to us can change over time. It's good to check in with ourselves and see if our priorities have shifted.
Totally agree. Self-improvement isn't about reaching some finish line. It's a journey. What matters most to you today might be totally different a year from now.
So listeners, think about it. Which of these habits could really make the biggest impact on your life? Which one are you ready to commit to and make a part of your everyday routine?
And remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are tons of resources out there to help you.
Yeah, books, podcasts, online groups, therapists, coaches, all kinds of stuff.
The key is finding what works for you and keeps you moving forward.
Well said. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into these 10 awesome habits for an improved life.
It's been a blast chatting with you about all this, and I hope our listeners are leaving with some inspiration and motivation to make positive changes.
If any of these habits really resonated with you, check out the original podcast episode, 10 Habits That Will Boost Your Life, and dive in even deeper.
Remember, small changes done consistently can make a big difference.
Be patient, celebrate your wins, and never stop learning and growing.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.